So I'm driving through this nighttime storm with horizontal rain and the kind of wind that you would normally associate with the Old Testament. I just left a family member's wedding early, which was kind of heartbreaking, but I had this work deadline that I was horrified of missing. So I'm driving through this, like, meteor shower on a tiny country road, and suddenly the god wind screams, and on the right side of the road I see this tree suddenly just slicing down toward me. I comprehend the need to swerve, but I can't. There are people in the other lane, and suddenly the tree just strikes the side of my car, and I look over past my wife, who is okay, and in the place where my side view mirror used to live, there are now just electrical wires that are shooting sparks. Recently, there have been some really amazing YouTube videos of people talking about their experiences with anxiety or depression, and so I wanted to tell you that story about the storm because it's kind of become a metaphor for me for my own experiences with depression. I've always been pretty good at covering my own feelings of depression.
Which sounds like ridiculous. I've always been pretty good at stubbing my toe every day on purpose, and I'm very proud of that.
But kind of like my whole life, I had this sort of ambient, low-level despair. I guess it was about 2 years ago now that suddenly, like, the weight of all of it, I just couldn't carry it. I don't know. Like, but it's like the compass broke and the lights blew out, is the way I would put it. And I don't necessarily mean like I felt suicidal or something. What I mean is that I just felt assaulted by everything. Like my senses, like my sensory experience of the world was just totally like overwhelmed, riddled, and glow in the dark with this anxiety. And when I finally decided to go to a psychologist, I honestly went for my wife's sake more than my own. I was like crazy nervous when I went. I was working in a bagel shop at the time, but I was so afraid when I went into the psychologist's office that I was going to see someone who came into the bagel station and then they were going to know that I was weak or dumb or messed up or whatever, and then they were going to tweet about it, and I was going to be banned from publishing in Hollywood for all time in the Phantom Zone, like Superman 2. Like, going to see the psychologist, though, wound up being, by far, the smartest thing I've ever done.
Well, I guess marrying my wife was smart. Number 2.
In that first session, I was diagnosed with something called dysthymia, which is kind of a mild, chronic depression. I just felt this immediate, like, whoosh of relief. And it's because the storm, you know, depression, it's a real thing. It's not just a character flaw that you feel that way. Trying to power through depression, like trying to will yourself into feeling better, I think that's a really dangerous thing to do. I used to be really afraid of talking about this. I was afraid that people would treat me like I was made of glass, which brings me back to the storm story. The next morning, I drove to where the mirror had been torn off, and I was so mad at myself. I was like, why was I so stupid or slow or weak? And I was kind of amazed, because I actually saw the mirror on the side of the road. So I parked and I went and I picked it up, and I thought, wait a second, this is not right. This is not the color of my car. And it wasn't, because just lying on the ground all around me were half a dozen different mirrors from different cars from people who had exactly the same problem that I had had. Thanks for watching. I am a little bit obsessed with Breaking Bad, but for months now I've been particularly obsessed with the idea of whether Walter White deserves redemption.